Right. Hello. Thank you everyone for joining us. Super excited to see you all here. By a quick, chat, can you all hear me? Can you just write a yes if you can hear me? Perfect. Thank you. Super excited to have you here. This webinar was something that I planned for a long time, and I am very happy that all of you are here. The good part is that I'm also joined by a couple of my colleagues. On my right is Pranay. Pranay works at NHA as a young professional, and on my left is Shobit. Shobit also works at NHA as a young professional. Both of them have very strong background. Both of them hail from engineering background from IITs, and they have been also well coherent with the development sector and dynamics. So I thought that it would be really helpful for all of us to hear more perspectives. Very quick background about me. I've been in this sector for a good 5.5 years. I have had privilege to work with several organizations ranging from United Nations, UNESCO, UN Women, Teach for India, IIC, University of Chicago, Niti Aayog. Right now, I'm working with National Health Authority. I work with Asian Development Bank. So it's been quite a roller coaster ride, and I am really glad that I got a chance to experience the different flavors which the development sector has seen. So just to give you a background of what this webinar is going to be and how we have structured it. So the first 30 minutes, we are just going to quickly talk about some of the insights that I have personally seen in last 5 years, and then we are going to take questions. The best way to put forward your questions is going to be the chat window. Now, there might be some questions which we might not be able to answer, probably due to the paucity of time, or probably we might not have the best context. So for that, you can always, forward me that particular message either on LinkedIn or Twitter. I go by the same name on both of the social media channels, and I'm pretty active on both of them. What is this particular webinar about is that we are going to give you a flavor about the development sector. What are the various opportunities which are possible? What are the different types of avenues which are there? How to access those type of opportunities? How the Indian development sector has grown, and at the same time, what is the different types of your peer groups that you will be meeting at different institutions or different categories of organization working under the ambit of development sector. Very important thing, and a lot of folks told me that I should mention this beforehand, is the fact that what this webinar is not about. First is this webinar is not about me talking about any political opportunities. Political sector as such is something which is growing, and it forms a big part of the whole development sector ecosystem. But I'm not the best person to talk about that, so we are not going to discuss that. The second thing that we are not going to talk about is something for which the information is very much available. That is the UPSC exams. Your civil services exams. A lot of information is available, and there are a lot of experts. A lot of folks who have much more experience, who are already there and probably can guide you better. To start with, I think in the last good 5 to 10 years, what I personally have experienced is that this particular sector, and when I'm talking about development sector, I'm gonna probably break down later, but I'm just going to use the development sector as a universe of policy making, research and academia, fellowship, government sector jobs, private sector impact consulting. I think this sector as such has shown and has seen a phenomenal growth. I think in the last 5 years, what we have seen is that a lot of governments, a lot of institutions have started realizing the importance of having more qualified professionals coming into this sector. The whole importance of policy making, the whole importance of consulting has rise phenomenally. So as such, we have seen a tremendous growth. And at the same time, one thing that I personally feel that we have just started scratching the surface. When I look at more developed countries in terms of like the European countries or the North American countries, or even for that matter, our near neighbors like the Southeast Asian countries, I see a very thick essence of policy making across vertical. And I think, we have just started opening the doors, to policy making, to development sector. And I think that is going to be something, which is bound to grow. Isha is saying connection lost. Am I still audible to everyone? Okay, am I audible to everyone? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to deep dive into the whole ecosystem of development sector, and I'm going to introduce several buckets that I have seen how the development sector has basically bifurcated into. So the first sector, that is one of the most upcoming sector which has emerged tremendously in the last 3 to 4 years, and which I think is a real springboard, especially for folks who have just completed their graduation or people who are still trying to get the flavor of what development sector about is the whole sector of fellowships. Now, I have seen a lot of great fellowships which have been designed, which are running, and which are creating some great leaders. A few fellowships that I would definitely like to highlight, and probably you can check out more. One of them is Teach for India. Teach for India is more on the lines of education fellowship, wherein a fellow is working for 2 years. And the basic ambit of a Teach for India fellow is to teach in the classroom as well as do the community development in that particular fellowship. The second and one of the most strongest fellowship, which is backed by great alumni, is the Young India Fellowship. Young India Fellowship, I think it's a fellowship which stands out from the other fellowship because it is more about a 1 year of experiential learning. And Pranay has been a Young India Fellow, so if you have specific questions, feel free to reach out to him. One great part of the YIF that I've seen is that after YIF, the type of opportunities which are available, with regard to the recruitment, with regard to the academics, I think it is cross-cutting, and the opportunities I have seen are really phenomenal. Like I really appreciate the type of opportunities that YIF has created for its alumni base. The third fellowship, which I think stands out very unique, is the LAMP Fellowship. So it's been started by PRS, wherein you have one particular legislative assistant to member of parliament. So folks who are interested into exploring the whole legislative system, into working with a member of parliament, I think that's a great 1 year of working. So you can check out the LAMP Fellowship. Then we have the Chief Minister's Good Governance Fellowship. A lot of states have started it. I think one of the state which actually is doing good is the state of Haryana. So you can check out the CMGGA, wherein basically you are placed in a district, and you work very closely with the district administrator there, and you basically work on the ground. But there is some small nuance of policy making. So CMGGA is a good option for you to check out. And the last one is the Gandhi Fellowship. Gandhi Fellowship is also very similar to Teach for India. It's based on the lines of education fellowship. So I think that has also been something which has carved in place. Now, with regard to the fellowships, I think what is really very unique about them is that they really don't require a lot of work experience. They have that type of flexibility. For you to come and experience the whole development sector at large. The second thing that I would like to say is that the exit option after the fellowship that I've personally seen is generally, the fellows going for higher studies, probably like a masters in public policy or like masters in business administration, something which is based either on a more of a professional course, once they get clarity about what they're really interested in. So I think this has been a good transition option. I've also seen some folks probably joining policy think tanks, consulting companies. So I think that has been a good option. In terms of the opportunities and in terms of the competition, I think fellowships, as usual, are a very competitive segment. But I think what really makes you stand out in that particular pool is if you have shown any type of leadership traits. So I think your participation and your particular experience working in college, doing extracurricular, or probably just engage in community engagement. I think that is something which is going to make you stand out. Also, someone has said State Bank of India Fellowship. I do know about that. I think it's called the SBI Youth for India Fellowship. I think that they have been also doing great work. So I think probably you can check that out. The second bucket, so fellowship was my first bucket. I'm going to move to the second bucket. So my second bucket is the whole NGO sector. Now, with the NGO sector, what has really happened is that this sector was always present, but now, the NGO sector has really carved out its own niche. The NGO sector as such has started, recruiting more people coming with, advanced degrees. They have started hiring people who have a particular inclination for working on the ground. So some of the NGOs which are doing great work are Pratham, Gunj, uh, probably Pradhan. So I've seen this particular NGOs doing some great work, and I think the sector as such demands you to work on the ground, to work more on the advocacy, to understand the community. So I think that particular segment has been really strong into the whole NGO environment. But one great stereotype with this NGOs have broken is the fact that you really don't need to be a typical a typical person coming from a Bachelor of Arts or a Masters of Art or a Masters of Social Work profile. Even being an engineer or even being coming with a Bachelor's of Commerce or anything, I think you will have some type of unique skill set to contribute. And I think the NGOs have started realizing that they're working on big projects. They are working on a lot of grants which are being given by multilateral agencies. So they are doing some big projects. And I think if you really want to work on a strengthening the community, I think this is a great sector to explore. And this sector is probably gonna grow at a rapid pace because there's so much to do in this country. And NGO sector is only one who has a great access to the grassroots. Now, the third bucket, which I think is important, uh, but the only problem with that particular bucket is that it's extremely competitive. So the third bucket is more about the foundations. So when I talk about foundations, I'm going to talk about the big foundations, which are global foundations. So one of them includes the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The second one includes your Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, which is MSDF. The third one includes something like a Rockefeller Foundation. Now, what generally you are expected in foundation is a couple of things. First is that you have a huge probably grant with you that you want to disperse to the smaller partners in a particular country working on a wide array of projects. And at the same time, the second part and the second function that generally a foundation do is that it works very closely with a particular government in terms of capacity building for that particular project, in terms of the design, in terms of the strategy, working across the sectors. So this particular foundations, the problem with that is the whole supply and the opportunities available are extremely less, and the number of people who are interested are exemplarily high. So generally, the folks that I meet at foundation, I generally see them, coming from a very strong MBA or a MPA, which is either Masters of Business Administration or a Masters of Public Administration background from some of the top universities, ranging from Harvard's to Oxford's. And they are they have to go through a filter process which includes like a good 5-6 rounds. So I think foundations is something which will require anyone a good work experience of, I think, around 5 to 6 years with probably an advanced degree to actually go into that particular sector. So if you're a freshman, or if you do not have the work experience of at least around 2 to 3 years, foundations might not be the best way to approach the jobs right now. And generally how the career gradation works in foundation is that you generally start either as a program either as a program analyst, and then from that you move to becoming a program manager, a program specialist, a program director. So that is how generally the career gradation works. Of course, the perks and the compensations are extremely high. So foundations justify the whole competition bit. Now, the fourth one, which I particularly get a lot of queries about, is the whole vertical about the multilateral agencies. So, when I talk about the multilateral agencies, I'm going to talk about the whole United Nations ecosystem, the UN and its affiliated agency that includes your UNICEF, UN Women, UNESCO, UNDP. The second one includes my banks, which is my World Bank, my Asian Development Bank, and all other banks which are funding big projects. So, these are my big multilateral agencies that are working in this particular domain. It shares very similar traits in terms of the foundation when it comes to, like, competencies of the candidates that it selects, the type of people it recruits. Generally, I have seen that this particular organization, they recruit more of a specialist. So, if you have done your MSc or probably MA or probably MPP or MPA, and if you have a good work experience of 2 to 3 years, then this is a good sector for you to start traversing. The second thing that I've seen is that folks who are planning to pursue PhD, I think they have a great scope in working in this particular sector, because all of this particular multilateral agencies, they have specialized wings. So, if I am someone who is interested in education, so for that I would generally look at something like a UNICEF. But if I am someone who is or probably UNESCO, or if I'm someone who is more interested towards, let's say, legal cell, then I would be probably looking at the UN legal council, or probably human rights, and I will be looking at probably the UN human rights council, or a UN special rapporteur, or the UN council on refugees, to join something sort of that. So there were very specialized offices which actually require specialized candidates. Similar trend applies for the World Bank as well as for the Asian Development Banks. There are very specific practice areas, and they require specific candidates. So that's actually a very interesting opportunity for folks who have already done their specialization, and then they want to make the cut in that particular area. uh, Generally, again, the career progression is that either you can join as a consultant. So with consultant, it's like a temporary contract, and being the employee, it's a permanent thing. So if you're joining as a consultant, then of course there are limited set of perks, but generally people start as consultants. They work a couple of years, depending on the renewal of the contract, and then they are absorbed depending on their particular ability to perform. So it's a good sector, but I think it will require all of you some time, who are either freshmen or who have just started working. I think it will require some time for you to get a glimpse about the sector and enter into this sector. uh, the next set of my particular bucket is a very is a very non-conventional sector, and which is something which has just started, and it is expanding at a rapid pace. So my next sector is actually getting embedded into government departments as consultants. So I have seen this trend, to have started a lot across the central government, across a lot of ministries, and at the same time across a lot of state departments. So generally how it works is that they recruit probably folks with a good 1 to 2 years of experience as young professionals. That also depends on which ministry that is. So I know that there is a young professionals program at Niti Aayog. There's a young professional program at the National Health Authority, Ayushman Bharat. There's a young professionals program in the Ministry of Sports that they have rolled out. So the idea behind this particular young professionals program is to have the best set of young talent, and making them understand the government processes, and at the same time taking the advantage of the young energy and the young idea into planning and running a scheme. I think it's a great idea, and the type of results that it has shown across Niti, across NHA, I think it has been a resounding success. One of the metric why I'm saying is success is because Niti Aayog has rolled out a particular program called Young Professionals. So they rolled out I think 3 to 4 years back. They every time they recruit around 20 to 30 young professionals every year. This time the advertisement is out for recruiting 60 young professionals. That just shows how much young professionals are required in such type of government setup. So I think that's a great program for you if you are interested in working with the government systems, if you are interested in working with understanding the government systems, and if you think that this is the type of experience that you want to have at least for 1 or 2 years. Now, at the same time, there is also opportunities which have rolled out for folks who have like a good 4 to 5 years of experience to join a particular private, to join a government setup as a consultant. So, again, Niti Aayog, NHA, other UID, Aadhaar, UIDI, this type of agencies come into my mind because they are actually recruiting a lot of, private consultants. So the idea is that you join the setup, you being a private sector person, you come there as a consultant, and then, you get embedded into the government setup, you understand the government setup, and then you work on the type of expectations which are set up by the institution. Now, the catch here is that they generally prefer folks who have got a good 2 years of experience, at least in working the government machinery. That is generally what I have seen, is because that, the consultants that they are recruiting, they want them to have a good idea about the processes, how the file movement works, how to get approvals, what are the different protocols. So that's a small observation that I've done, but not necessarily. Like, this is not a mandatory thing. So this is something that you can explore. With regard to, the normal remuneration, it's pretty competitive. And at the same time, the competition itself is also a lot, especially in the young professionals program, because, working with the government, getting that unique experience is something that everyone wants. So, if this is something that you want to plan, if Niti Aayog is something that you are interested in, you should definitely check out the latest advertisement which has been put out. Now, after this particular bucket, wherein, I'm asking, or probably I'm detailing, young professionals working in the government setup, one new bucket, which is a very attractive bucket, which has quite a good number of opportunities, is the whole impact consulting bucket. And this also happens to be a bucket which is very reasonably balanced in terms of the competency which is required, the type of remuneration and the type of compensation that you get, and at the same time the type of work that you would be doing. So a lot of companies, including, your best consulting companies across the globe, including, McKinsey's and your Bain and your BCG, Deloitte, PwC, all of them have started their impact consulting practice. At the same time, there are also, exclusive development consulting firms like Dalberg, like FSG, which has started its own development consulting before like a good 5 to 10 years. So here, generally, how does it work is that, you get a particular project, either, you're working with a government, or either you're working with a private organization, but the realm of work includes development sector. So, there will be projects surrounding, making a health policy, or, designing an implementation framework for clean water. So you are a consultant, so you are not a part of the government, but you are working with the government, being an employee of a particular consulting organization. So I think this particular structure, a lot of them say this to be a government consulting practice. Some say this is impact consulting practice. I think one very interesting program that I would like to recommend to you all to check out is also the International Innovation Core program, which has been started by the U Chicago, before a good 4 years. I think it does very similar work in terms of like impact consulting, wherein you get a chance to work with multiple governments, and wherein you are consulting, different governments across the sphere. So I think that's a very interesting program that you should check out. And I think the good part about this particular bucket is the fact that there's a very, very strong career gradation. So if I discount, my foundations, and if I discount my multilateral agencies, the whole piece of career gradation is something which is not strong in the other buckets, like my fellowship, or something like a young professionals program in a government setup, which is generally like a contractual, a couple of years or 3 years program. In consulting, there's a very strong career gradation, wherein you generally start either as an analyst or either as an associate, then you move to being a senior project associate, then you move to become a project manager, engagement manager, associate director, or like director, partner. So there's a lot of very strong career gradation which is there in this sector, which makes this a very reliable career opportunity. So I think this is something which has also been very interesting, and the government has started acknowledging the role of this particular private companies in helping them shape the policies, and in also helping them implement different policies. So this type of companies are not only working at the central level, but also they are working at a state level. So I think this is one sector that you should explore. In terms of the competencies, I think what you require is probably, I think 1 or 1.5 year of work experience. Probably something which is more aligned either in your tech space or in your, capacity building space, and probably a degree which is required is your bachelor's, but that is from a very premier college. So if you have a bachelor's from a premier college, then the chances are high that you will, make into one of these particular consulting companies. If you have a advanced degree and if you have a good 4 to 5 years of experience, then probably I would recommend you to apply for a role of a senior project associate or as a project manager, because that is generally how, how the intake is done in all of these consulting companies. uh, the last bucket, which is, which is been always there, but it has, I would say, redefined its role, is the whole bucket of research and academia. Now I think this particular bucket has experienced a lot of transition in terms of, if I look at, the research in academia, which was, which used to be done probably a 10-15 years down the before today, was the fact that, at that particular time, there was a lot of research with regard to, whether the policy was implemented in a right way or not, whether the type of implementation which was done, actually met its execution goals or not. If I look at the research in academia now, I see that, the entire field is extremely dominated and is extremely backed by using a lot of evidence, by using a lot of database policy making. So what I'm witnessing right now is that I see a lot of research in academia actually working on a lot of policy blueprints, a lot of policy white papers, which actually can help the government into setting up the national policy. So I have seen this trend, emerging across the globe, not only India but across the globe. Some of the notable organizations that, which are on top of my head is definitely Brookings. There is a, there is Center for Policy Research. There is ORF. So these organizations are doing some great work. They are writing papers. They are making blueprints on some of the most futuristic policies, like the future of work. The artificial, sure, JPAL, IFMR. Things like future of work. What is the artificial intelligence which is required in the defense sector, in the manufacturing sector, something that the government still hasn't very actively started thinking. The research and academia, just from being a monetary and evaluation role, they have transitioned to become a torch bearers of, actually shaping policies. So if research and if, making policies or if drafting policies is your forte, that is something that you want to gain experiences, this is a great sector to go ahead with. One thing that I want to, mention here is that across the sectors, three skills that we personally, and we were just having a quick chat before this, three particular skills that we have seen, or three particular traits that we have seen, which are common, is the first, that you need to have very strong interpersonal skill if you want to enter and grow. When I say interpersonal skills, I mean your way to communicate, your way to understand, all the information which is coming, your way to negotiate, and your overall presentation skills. I think that is, something which has become a huge important trait that all the development sector organizations have been looking for. The second thing is your ability to articulate in writing. So, I have seen that regardless of whatever jobs you're doing in the development sector, your documentation skills and your ability to express your ideas or a policy or implementation framework is something which has become really crucial and has become really critical. The third one is the whole aspect of networking. I think what we have generally seen is that the development sector is a very closely knit network, wherein it is extremely important for you to keep on developing the relationships, when it is extremely important for you to develop your knowledge base. And the best way to actually start doing that is by networking. And I'm not telling you to do, an inorganic networking, but actually going out and meeting people and talking to them about your interests. I think that helps a lot in you understanding what are the interests of other, what are the other interesting opportunities, and where are the synergies. So I think, the whole aspect of networking, I think that has become extremely important. and overall, a general consciousness of working with data and having a comfort working with data is something which is really going to help you. So, something 10 years or 15 years down the line, when I thought back, was the fact that, there used to be people which used to basically resist working with data. But now the whole scenario has changed. I think, working with data is something which has become really important. And I think that is going to stay and that is going to grow. So you should make a peace with you that, data is something that is going to grow with us. So, we should start understanding the data and, starting to magnify the importance of data. So I think this is a good 30 minutes insight from our side. We are going to take some questions and we are going to give you a good 2 minutes to synthesize your thoughts. Take a good 2 minutes, and we'll be right back and then we can start taking questions.